Doug, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Good to be here.
Good. Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Shop and Chivalry podcast. My guest today is another alderman running for Ward, is it 3?
Ward 3.
Ward 3, Doug Walker. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been an interesting ride, something I've never done before. Never ran for public office before, but I've wanted to do it for many years. I was prevented from doing it legally because of what I did for a living, which was a television news reporter.
Sure.
And under FCC guidelines, a person who is on the air cannot run for public office.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
And so my choices were to either take a leave of absence or quit, run for office, possibly lose, and then become homeless, which would really make my wife mad.
Yeah, not a great long-term strategy, honestly.
Or wait until I retired. So I waited until I retired from WLOX after 30 years, and now I'm running for Alderman. It's a dream of mine to make the city better. I've been here for a very long time in Ocean Springs, and I love the city, and I want to see it do better.
Okay. Well, so tell us about your ward.
Well, my ward is, geographically, it's pretty small. If anyone's familiar with Ocean Springs, it basically runs from Pine Street down to Halstead, from Government Street down to Davidson, and a few neighborhoods south of Davidson. But it is almost entirely residential, more than 1,000 homes. So geographically small, but very packed with homes. Very few businesses. There are some businesses on Government Street, but for the most part, it's residential. So a lot of people, a lot of homeowners, some renters, and it's been interesting going door to door. I've done it once, and knocking on doors, talking to people, finding out what their concerns are, what they want to see happen in the city. And I actually timed it. If anybody thinks this is a glamorous thing to do, let me clue you in right now.
Sure.
57 hours.
Oh, really?
I spent walking, knocking on every door in the ward. That was the first time around in December. In about a week, in early February, I'm going to go do it again.
Goodness.
Yeah.
So what's it like knocking on doors in a COVID environment?
Actually, I did a video about that on my Facebook page because I had some people ask me, how do you campaign safely? So what I do is I go up to a door and I knock on it, and I've also got a mask and hand sanitizer in my pocket if it's needed or if they want me to, but so far that hasn't happened. But anyway, I'll knock on the door and then I will back away a good 6 feet. And then I will give my introduction, tell them what I'm trying to do, tell them what I stand for, and ask for their support. I have a push card that I've created, and I will reach out very far, probably a good 5 feet, hand on the push card, and then I'll back away again.
Okay.
It's weird. I'll just be honest with you. You know, you're used to going up and shaking hands with people and talking with them and getting close to them, and you don't do that in a COVID environment. And it's frustrating. It's strange. It's sad, but it's the reality that we have to deal with, and so that's how I keep myself safe. That's how I keep everybody I come in contact with safe. Sure.
And I'll tell you, even just meeting you outside, I wanted to shake your hand, but it's one of those like almost taboo things right now. You can't just kind of reach out and make that normal human connection.
And I wonder how long it's going to take to get that back. Once we get back to normal, we will get back to normal. It's not going to happen anytime soon, even with the vaccine rollout.
Right.
Because the vaccine rollout is going to take at least 9 months to vaccinate the vast majority of Americans and those who want it. There are still some who are not going to take it.
Right.
So you're still looking at 9 months away, so no handshakes, no close contact. Things are not going to change overnight. They are getting better, and they will get better, but we're not at the end of the road by any means.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, so what kind of problems are there in your ward, if any?
Almost every ward in the city has got the same problems, and those problems are drainage and road paving. I mean, if you went to Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or the at-large ward, those things are all the same. You have drainage problems and you have street paving problems. And so those are the major things. Some of the things I'm looking at are big picture items. I mean, everybody wants drainage improved. I'll work on doing that in Ward 3. Everybody wants a street paving done on their street that hasn't been paved for 30 years. I'll work on those issues. But I also want to see us do better on Highway 90, the traffic control on Highway 90. I don't think widening Highway 90 is the answer. We can get into that a little bit more.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to.
Better police and fire pay. Police have been paid now. Amazingly, the current Board of Aldermen announced that literally 3 months to the day before the election happens, that the police officers are getting a significant raise. I'm glad for the police officers.
Sure.
They deserve it. But the firefighters have been left out. Public Works has been left out. We need to address those as well because we're losing people in droves because of low pay. They just can't make ends meet. It's bad that a starting fireman in the city of Ocean Springs makes a little over $11 and change.
You know, I think it's interesting and sad that these public servants maybe don't even make enough money to live in the city that they're working for.
Well, many of them are working 2 and 3 jobs. Basically, police officers do security work on the side to make ends meet. I know several firemen who work at a building supply company in Ocean Springs as a second job to make ends meet. And when you're spending that amount of time on a job, firefighters are there for 24 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Police officers are working either 8 or 12-hour shifts. You work that job, you're pretty tired. But to make ends meet, you got to go out and work another job. So again, I'm happy that the police officers have gotten a raise. And we now need to work on firefighters, and we need to work on public works because, again, we're losing people in droves simply because we get them trained, we get them experience, and then they go on to greener pastures.
That's right.
And not in Minneapolis or Dallas or Chicago.
Yeah, we're talking about Goshen, Biloxi.
Jackson County. They're going right up the road.
Yeah.
So we've got to be competitive in that regard.
Agreed.
Utility deposits. One of the things I questioned, and this was an idea that I'm glad the city officials looked at and said, you know, Doug had a pretty good idea there. Let's do that. So, for instance, in every public utility that I've ever dealt with in my entire life, Mississippi Power, Alabama Power, this will date me, South Central Bell, Mobile Water and Gas, you pay that utility a deposit when you sign up as a new customer, and once after a year or so, you've proven yourself to be an on-time, good-paying customer, that money's refunded to you, not the city of Ocean Springs. You pay them a deposit, and they keep it for years and decades. About the only way you get it back is either move or die, and those aren't 2 really good choices. However, so I made it a campaign issue, really wanted to push for those utility deposits to be refunded to the people who paid them decades ago. It's their money, it's not the city's. Well, a few weeks ago, the current mayor, who is running for re-election, announced that he is now going to give those utility deposits back. So a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, though, this morning, Gulf Live at 10 a.m. Released a story that said that Shea Dobson will not seek re-election.
Well, he had put up on his Facebook page, and he had been doing some campaigning on his Facebook page. Now, that is not that surprising simply because I noticed this very curiously. Up until just a couple of days ago, he had not qualified. That doesn't mean he won't, or couldn't, because the qualifying deadline is February the 6th.
I see, okay.
But he had not qualified as of a couple of days ago. There were 3 other candidates in the mayor's position. Has Shea done a good job? I mean, I'll give him credit for this. I mean, he's shown up for work. I think some of the things he wants to achieve, I don't necessarily agree with. I think...
Are you saying achieve for the city or on a personal level?
I think on both. I mean, I personally like Shea Dobson. I think he's a nice fellow. He's been very generous to me over the years, very appreciative of what I do for a living as being a television reporter, always accessible. He shows up for work, and so I grant him credit for that. However, he's made some moves that I think damaged his ability to run again or to be reelected. First was the flag issue.
The flag issue.
When he first got into office, he put the flag back up, the original 1894 state flag. A lot of people complained, so he brought it back down again. Well, even more people complained, so let's put it back up again. And so this waffling on the state flag issue brought a lot of attention to Ocean Springs that wasn't needed or wanted. Protests, rallies, national news attention on a small city on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that has trouble with the flag. So that was one thing that kind of bothered me. If you're going to make a decision, stick with it.
Yeah.
Make the decision and say, that's my decision. You may not agree with it, but it's my decision. I'm sticking with it.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Yeah. So moving on from that, if we can get into kind of our first issue here, or topic rather, some concerns about the election have to do, or about the current administration, we'll say, has to do with the use of executive session. So where they go kind of behind closed doors with the aldermen and they solve issues through their executive session. What are your thoughts on executive session?
I think they're terrible.
Okay.
I think they're absolutely terrible. And the reason why is because I've seen it firsthand. I worked at WLOX for 30 years, but I was a broadcast journalist for 42 years, 12 of those in radio.
Okay.
I have covered literally thousands of meetings and watched people go into executive session thousands and thousands of times. Secret government sows the seeds of distrust among the people who are being governed. Mm-hmm. Every time you close the door on the public, you're closing the door on sunlight, and I am terribly opposed to it. I did a special report about 5 or 6 years ago called Behind Closed Doors, and I didn't focus on every government entity on the coast. I focused on Hancock County, Jackson County, and Harrison County. All of them. 85% of all their meetings, they went into executive session to discuss things. I talked with First Amendment attorneys. The bottom line is this. Just because you can go into executive session doesn't mean you have to or even should. The choice is yours. The most popular reason for going into executive session is, quote, potential litigation. Anything can be potential litigation.
Sure.
So it gives them an open door to say, well, potential litigation, let's go behind closed doors and deal with it. And like I said, it sows the seeds of distrust, and I don't like them. I will fight against almost all the executive sessions when they're proposed. And the reason why is some are absolutely necessary, especially when you're dealing with personnel issues. People who are working for the city, there may be a disciplinary hearing, there may be some structural hearing. That, I understand, should be an executive session. But all this other stuff that they've done over the years doesn't have to be. And again, people don't like that when they get the door closed on them in a meeting and the powers that be, the elected officials, go behind closed doors and come out a half an hour later and say, well, we took no action. What did they say?
Sure.
Why did they say it?
What was the context of that decision? Yeah.
Right, exactly. I'll give you a perfect example of a executive session that did not have to take place because of potential litigation. Several months ago, back in 19, there was a controversy over 2 huge live oak trees on Front Beach.
Okay.
And the city recommended that they be cut down. There was a huge hearing at City Hall. It almost looked like a trial that lasted for like 4 hours. And at the end of the day, they went into executive session to discuss what to do about these trees. If I had been on the Board of Aldermen at that time, I simply would have said, okay, guys, look, if we vote to take the trees down, we're getting sued. If we vote to keep the trees up, we're getting sued. What's the big secret? That's why we have a city attorney to defend our position, to defend our vote.
That's right.
There's no reason to go behind closed doors to discuss something that everybody knows is going to happen anyway. You're going to get sued either way you go.
Right. And it's interesting, too, because I think one of the reasons that came out of that was that they had proven economic hardship, but that was never presented or recorded in the minutes either, that there was some sort of economic hardship that existed.
Well, long story short, the person who wanted to buy the property wanted to build a house, and to build the house she wanted would have to take those 2 live oak trees down, which are at the front of the property. The opponents of that said, you have plenty of room to build any house you want without taking down the trees. So right now, the trees are still there, but they have been cut back tremendously. Will they be able to survive? I don't know. I'm not an arborist.
Right.
But they've been really, really cut back tremendously.
Okay, so do you think that the process by which we decide to cut down a tree, do you think that needs to be changed at all? Or
yes.
Because right now I think it's just a tree committee, right? It's
no.
non-city officials?
No.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay.
The Board of Aldermen voted to abolish the Tree Protection Committee during this controversy.
I see.
We need to bring that Tree Protection Committee back. Bring in some citizens without a dog in the hunt who care about the city, who are engaged with the city, to look at these applications for tree removal. And in doing so, you spread the wealth around and don't lay the important decision on one person in the building department. That's not the way to go. We need to bring back the Tree Protection Committee. That's something I will work very hard on doing. And I hope the other aldermen will see the need for that committee as well.
Yeah, it's I've gotten some feedback after I interviewed Melanie Hallen about what's with these trees in Ocean Springs. Like, why is this such a hot topic, trees in a town?
Well, it's a hot topic everywhere. I mean, everywhere. We have magnificent live oaks from one end of this coast to the other, from Pearlington all the way to Orange Grove. And I'm not talking about the Orange Grove in Gulfport. There's actually an Orange Grove community in Jackson County at the state line. But these beautiful, magnificent live oaks, some of them hundreds of years old, they provide a canopy of beauty that can't be matched just about anywhere in the country. I compare them to the redwoods in California. That's how beautiful these trees are. We need to protect them. And that's why there was such a hullabaloo when MGM Park was being built in Biloxi, because that parking lot, which was Beau Rivage property at the time, had several live oaks. And if you were here at the time, I don't know if you were, but there was a huge controversy over cutting down those live oaks. So cutting down live oaks, protecting our trees, is not just a big issue in Ocean Springs, it's a big issue in every city on the coast.
Sure. And it is a big issue on the coast. Again, some of my friends are out west, in California or in the Midwest, and they'll reach out to me and ask, like, what's up with these trees? And of course, you just have to see them, obviously, and see how they provide the canopy driving through downtown. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
it really is.
They're a treasure, and they're an economic development tool. Trees, beyond a shadow of the doubt, it's been proven by economists, they actually add value to a person's property.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me ask you this. So what is it about Ocean Springs, maybe aside from the trees, that you love so much that you want to run?
I love the city. I have raised both of my children there in the city. One was born there. One was born in Mobile, but we moved here 2 years later when I lived in Mobile. They went to school, K through 12. At Ocean Springs. One went to Mississippi State and got a degree. The other went to USM and got a degree. It's a wonderful place to raise a family. The school system is top-notch, and people are not afraid to open up their wallets to support great education.
Right.
Ocean Springs is known for that. Now, it's not cheap to provide a fantastic education.
No, it's not.
The school taxes in Ocean Springs are significant. But I think the vast majority of people in Ocean Springs believe in education and believe that by paying for good education, you're going to get good results. And that's why we have 5-rated stars schools. That's why some of our high schools, some of the middle schools are some of the best in the state. And so it's a great place to raise a family. It's quiet. It's safe. My wife was actually born and raised in Ocean Springs. I've been married to Lila now for 43 years.
Well, congrats on that.
Well, you congratulate me. She may not accept that congratulations. she may have a different take on that whole situation. 43 years with this guy? Really? Come on. Jeez. Give it a break.
Yeah, I just hit 10, so yeah. It's a fun ride.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and we've gone full circle. When we first got married, to be honest with you, we were broke, just dirt poor, and we both worked hard, and we've improved our lives. We improved the lives of our children, and I'm not a rich man by any means, but I made a nice living. I've made a comfortable living, and I still drive cheap cars because at one point,
ditto,
I was poor.
That's right.
This is a guy that bought, and for anybody who goes back this time, my choice in cars, I bought a Vega.
A Vega. I know the car.
What a nightmare. What a nightmare. The Vega with the exploding aluminum engines.
There you go.
Yeah, a Vega.
Well, what was the Ford car? It was the Pinto, I think, that had a high probability of explosion if it got rear-ended.
Yeah, and it had that huge glass back window, and so if you got in a rear-end accident, you were either going to die of whiplash or cut glass.
Yeah,
because the glass was going to come flying at you.
Yeah,
but things have changed with cars. But I had a Vega. That's probably the worst decision I ever made.
Right. And so when I talk about Ocean Springs, and I had to leave Ocean Springs in order to actually appreciate it, and coming back and making that drive down Washington, coming back downtown, and you see, like I said before, that these huge trees just kind of providing this canopy over downtown, and even driving down Porter, all these roads where you've got these massive oak trees out there. It's as if we have this harmonious agreement with nature that they permit us to live here, and so it's almost like it evokes a sense of responsibility to the trees as well.
I agree with you entirely. That's a great way to put it, great analogy. They provide comfort, they provide enjoyment, they provide shade, they provide protection from a storm. If your house is surrounded by 4 or 5 big live oaks, which are very sturdy, strong trees, and you get a Cat 2 hurricane coming in here blowing at 110 miles an hour, those trees are going to help protect your house.
Yeah.
So they serve many purposes besides just their beauty.
Yeah, that's very true. So when you drive into Ocean Springs, this has been a topic of discussion as well, is how do we present the right image to people coming into the city, because either coming from the east on 90, west on 90, or down Washington, and even 57. What can we do to improve the look of our city to make it more appealing, or is that even a question worth asking?
Well, anything can be improved. Anything can be improved. We need to maintain our medians better than we have been, and I think the city does a pretty decent job of maintaining the medians. But if you're going out, especially into East Ocean Springs along Highway 90, a lot of the growth on the south side and the north side of Highway 90 is up around knee-high. That needs to be cut. We need to work with the state. We need to work with the Mississippi Department of Transportation, MDOT, to make sure these green spaces stay trimmed and neat and attractive. People are turned off by ugliness.
Sure.
And they don't like it. They don't want to be a part of it. That's one of the problems we have on the coast as an interstate. Interstate 10, and I've done several stories on this over the years, is a train wreck when it comes to garbage.
Yeah.
It's a train wreck. And let's say you've got somebody driving here from Arizona or somebody coming down from North Carolina, and they're on I-10 and they see garbage everywhere. What's their impression? It's not a good one.
Sure.
And so beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder wants beauty, and if he doesn't see it or she doesn't see it, they're not going to come, they're not going to stay. More importantly, they're not going to move here.
Sure. Beauty is kind of, I don't want to get too far off topic, but beauty in and of itself is a judge, because something that's beautiful is a constant reminder of what you should attain to, or you should try to attain or achieve, right? So if you've ever had somebody who has a room in the house that's just immaculate, but you can't go into it because you can't disturb it, that's, to me, in a philosophical sense, a testament to what the rest of the house should be. It's an ideal. And when the house is not in order, right, it doesn't appeal to the ideal that's in that house. So
well, in that example you gave, obviously that person who lives in that house doesn't have small children.
or they have a very strict rule.
No, they don't have small children. A 4-year-old doesn't care about rules.
Right.
I'm just yanking every toy I can out of this shelf and throwing it anywhere I can. I mean, that's the way kids operate.
Right.
Right now, I've got 5 grandchildren. So in addition to raising my own, so I've got almost a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and 2 newborns.
Wow.
So and the 5 and the 4 and the 3-year-old, let's just say they can be a little messy.
Well,
but that's part of being a granddad.
Yeah, that's right.
And besides, at the end of the day, you can sit there and talk to your daughters and son-in-law and say, okay, take them back. I raised you, take them back.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like a best friend's boat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I love going on it. I'll pour some money into it to have a good time. But at the end of the day, you need to go take it home, clean, that whole thing.
You take care of the problem. I'm out of here.
Well, so on the subject of East Ocean Springs, and that's a place to talk about city improvement, is there's been a lot of talk about improving and investing in East Ocean Springs and building that up. And I've even heard talks of people say, imagine if Dr. Sangani dropped Sangani Boulevard in East Ocean Springs. And while that sounds maybe ideal because we do have money leaving D'Iberville or leaving Ocean Springs to go to D'Iberville, the trappings of that, the negative trappings of having Sangani Boulevard and East Ocean Springs would also come with it.
Too much growth is not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
Growth has got to be controlled. But to be honest with you, I don't think you're going to see that kind of development on Highway 90 in East Ocean Springs. Whenever you look at these huge retail developments, they're always springing up around interstate interchanges. Cow and Lorraine Road.
That's a good
You look
example.
at D'Iberville, Highway 67. You look at Highway 49 in Gulfport with the outlet mall. All of these interstate spurs are the catalyst for development. I don't think anybody's going to drive down 57 south for 4 miles to get on Highway 90 and take a right and head into Ocean Springs to go to some retail outlets. I just don't see it happening. That doesn't mean that we can't have stores. That doesn't mean we can't have development. But I think it would be more for the locals and for the people who live in Gaucher, as opposed to being a tourist mecca or a tourist draw, like D'Iberville is, like the outlet mall is in Gulfport. These draw tourists who come here to the coast because tourists shop. I just don't see that happening in Ocean Springs. They have the Harbor Freight or something like that. I can't remember the name of the store, but that's the only thing that's been built.
Tractor Supply.
Tractor Supply
That's what it
in
is,
Ocean Springs. That's the only thing that's really been built in the last decade out there. There have been a few things that'll pop up here and there, but that's the biggest retail development that's happened in Ocean Springs in the last 10 years.
Well, what about annexing, all the way up 57 just past the interstate to include the shed, and now Ocean Springs has that property and they can now start to actually develop that. Of course, you've got the industrial park there, but could you drop a big box store there, and would that be good for the city?
It may be good for the city, but I think annexation at this point in time is a bad idea. You and I discussed this when we had
Sure.
our initial conversation. We need to take care of our own house. We need to make sure that what we're doing in Ocean Springs is correct, is proper, is smart, leads to good development, that we're making wise decisions with taxpayer money before we start getting pie in the sky and saying, oh, let's bring in all these other people, let's bring in all these other neighborhoods, let's go into St. Andrews, let's go into Gulf Park Estates, let's go up 57, let's go north of the interstate to the shed, let's take all this in. Somewhere the bottom line is you got to pay for it. It has to be paid for. If you annex something, you've got to provide city services, and you have to do it within 5 years. Unfortunately, in a lot of annexation cases that I've covered over the last 30 years, that doesn't happen. And there's no real hand slap to make the cities do that. There are some places in Biloxi along Potts Ferry Road that were annexed 25 years ago, and it took 20 years, 25 years to even get water and sewer into those areas. They're supposed to do it in 5. The only thing that happens almost immediately in an annexation case is fire and police protection. That happens almost immediately. Parks and recreation, welfare of the streets, road paving, all that takes a lot more time.
Sure. And on the subject of annexation, it's probably easier to get open land, like say what's up 57, than say homes and residences, because now they're going to bear the cost of increased taxes and property taxes to pay for those services like police and fire.
Exactly. Who wants to pay more taxes? I mean, if you go into an area and annex it, these people are in the county, in Jackson County right now. They're paying a county tax. They're not paying a city tax. You tell them, well, you're going to get police and fire protection, but you're going to have to pay more for it. Their answer usually in an annexed area or a target for annexation is, I've already got police and fire protection. I don't need the city for that.
Insofar as I believe I need it. Yeah, exactly.
I've got the sheriff's department to protect me, and I've got volunteer VFDs to protect me.
Look, and I'll just speak for myself on this. I mean, I live in a part of Gulf Park Estates that I think would be one of the targets of an annexation. There are parts of Gulf Park Estates that are less desirable, but I was talking with my wife about it. Living in Gulf Park Estates is kind of a cheat code because it's much cheaper. And you get to take advantage of going to these great schools as well. So some people are barely able to get their kids into these schools living in Gulf Park Estates, and to raise their taxes might force them out of the city.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I understand the need for annexation, but
what is that exactly? Because other people may not.
Growth.
Yeah.
Growth. A city cannot remain stagnant. That's what Biloxi was facing when they were just on the peninsula. The only place to grow was north of the Back Bay, Pops Ferry. So if you don't grow, you will eventually stagnate, and eventually the town will die. So growth is a good thing. My main thing is, before you grow, make sure you can maintain what you already have. Once you've proven you can do that, and even put money in the bank as opposed to spending every dime you get, then you can take a look at possible annexation. The laws are such that the people who are the target of annexation don't have much of a say. I would like to see them have a say in their future. They've invested in a piece of property. They've invested in a home. They've invested in a lifestyle. And for a city to come along and just snatch that from them without any input from them at all, I think is wrong. I think inherently we need to have the targets of annexation have at least some kind of say in the situation.
Gotcha. And that makes perfect sense. So, to grow, obviously you're going to get the revenue, but I think a lot of people also on the cost of living, if we can talk about that a little more, is that increasing taxes is obviously not that desirable, for people having to pay them, right? So how do you increase, like, say, revenue for growth without increasing, at the end of the day, what somebody pays?
Smart spending.
Okay.
And I'll give you a perfect example of that. I'll give you a couple of examples. And I don't want to be too hard on this current Board of Aldermen, but they have made some mistakes.
Sure.
We'll put it to you this way. People who run for public office, and I'm running for public office, if they thought everything was perfect, they wouldn't be running.
Sure.
I wouldn't be running if I thought they're all doing a great job down there.
Right.
Smart spending. Let's not hire a private company, pay them up front $30,000 to recruit new businesses under a one-year contract. At the end of that 1 year, this company recruited zero businesses.
Not a single one.
You could have taken that $30,000 and either A, paid 12 city employees a $2,500 a year raise for 1 year, or flushed it down the toilet, because it's about the same thing. That's smart spending. We have a dog park now. This city spent about $85,000 to $90,000 building a dog park. It's a nice dog park. I'm not denying that. But it could have been done much cheaper. And for the powers that be that are listening, they're going to, well, how do you know that, Doug? Well, I'll tell you how I know that. I covered the building and groundbreaking of a dog park in Hurley, in North Jackson County. They spent $25,000 building their dog park. We spent about $85,000 to $90,000. And the dog parks are very similar. They both have fenced-in areas for large and small dogs. They both have water stations. They both have playthings. They're about the same. So why was Jackson County able to do it for $25,000 and we had to pay $85,000 or $90,000? I'm not sure why. But obviously, smart spending will save money.
It's got to be painful for you throughout the years to investigate these things, these decisions that are made maybe by cities or bureaucracies or organizations in general, and see them make such terrible decisions or mistakes.
Well, no, it was my job.
Yeah.
My job was to be a watchdog. That's the job of a good journalist. Not be opinionated, but be a watchdog. Be a watchdog for the taxpayers' dollars, because that's who pays for everything, are the taxpayers. And when I saw wrongdoing, when I saw bad decisions, I reported on it. Reported on it fairly, tried to give everybody all sides of the story, but expose wrongdoing, expose bad decisions, because government makes bad decisions and makes bad things happen. It's just a matter of course. It's a human nature. Anybody who's elected to public office and serves on a public board, they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
We're a human.
Sure.
But you have to learn from your mistakes. So by that I mean, I brought up the example of the $30,000. Well, after losing the $30,000, they hired yet another company to come in and recruit retail. Now, this one was under much smarter contract. In other words, pay for performance. My question is, why are we even spending that money at all? We have a high-functioning, well-respected Chamber of Commerce in the city of Ocean Springs. That's their job. Why should we go out and hire a private firm to recruit new businesses when we have a Chamber of Commerce that does exactly the same thing? Which, by the way, the city spends and pays a stipend to every year to help the chamber operate. That's their job. Let the chamber do what the chamber does. We don't need to hire a private company to bring in retail.
Is there an efficacy issue? Maybe the Chamber of Commerce is not recruiting well enough? Or
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think everybody I've talked to says the chamber does a great job. There was a chamber director that served there for decades and was well loved and well respected. And the current chamber director, Cynthia Sutton, is well respected, well liked, and they can do a good job. We don't need to pay somebody to do the job that the chamber is doing anyway.
Makes sense. That certainly makes sense.
Well, that's kind of what I thought. Just me, though.
Right. So, moving down Ocean Springs from say the east and moving west, there's some shopping centers that seem to be vacant. Some have been vacant for a long time. What can the city do to better help businesses to kind of remove the vacancy?
Well, tax incentives is one thing. Finally, and this goes before your time here on the coast, but where the big, huge Goodwill Supercenter is now, that was vacant for about 25 years. It used to be a Del Champs grocery store. And finally, they got Goodwill to come in and take over that space, and it's doing good things for that area. You've got to provide incentives, either through lower taxes or through some kind of an abatement to make these properties attractive. I'd much rather see us fill a vacant, empty space that's been there for years than build a new building. It just makes more sense.
Right. Well, the irony is that you've got a chicken place right next to a vacant building that used to be a KFC there, kind of across from the AT&T call center, Raising Cane's.
Yeah. What happened with, and that's interesting that you bring up the AT&T call center, that used to be a Walmart.
Yeah, that's right.
Used to be a Walmart. They incentivized the city at that time, which was several years ago. And so the AT&T call center took over that space, which was a great thing. Instead of leaving an old, empty Walmart building sitting there rotting for years, it's now productive and is on the tax rolls. And that's what needs to be done. I cannot stress more enough. We have to fill the vacant spots before we build new stuff. It's just that simple.
That's right. Well, I definitely agree with that. I've heard ideas tossed around, and I'm curious. I think I know how you feel about this, but I'll ask anyway. What about the opposite side of leveraging taxes and taxing, say, the individual that owns a shopping center for not having a business in that store?
How do you do that? This is America.
Yeah. Well,
this isn't Russia. I mean,
San Francisco's doing that right now, but they're having.
Like I said, this is America.
Right.
This is not San Francisco. The bottom line is, it's his property.
That's right.
If he's not making it attractive enough to have a tenant come in and take over the property or rent from him, that's his problem. It's not the city's problem.
So what would you say to the counter of well, they could just lower their lease, their rent, so that another business could actually afford to be there?
Again, that's up to the business owner. By incentivizing, what I mean is you incentivize the business owner.
That's right.
Of that property, give him a bit of a tax break that he can pass that tax break along to would-be tenants.
Sure.
And you just don't give them a tax break, you put it in writing. Okay, we're going to give you a tax break to make your property more attractive, and in doing so, you've got to follow the rules. If you don't pass that incentive along, then we're going to take it back.
Yeah.
We do that so often with so many things. We give tax breaks to companies to locate in the state, and do things, and when they don't perform, we just turn a blind eye. We just walk away. We ought to put things in the contract that say, if you don't live up to your end of the deal, we're cutting you off. And we never do that.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the fear I would have to lowering rent would be that you might end up making the place more appealing to a business that may not be good for the other businesses that exist within that shopping center, you know?
Well, a business that's not good is not going to last.
Sure.
The law of supply and demand, the law of economics.
That's
if
right.
you're running a business that is slipshod and isn't very good, you're just not going to last. The market will take care of bad businesses.
Sure.
I don't think the government should be taking care of bad businesses. The marketplace will decide it. The customers will decide it. If you're not doing a good job as a businessman, you're not going to be a businessman much longer.
Yeah. That certainly makes sense. Let's talk about downtown. Downtown seems to be the cultural epicenter. It's a tourist epicenter of Ocean Springs. So, what are your thoughts about downtown? What can we do about it? And like with there's traffic issues there.
Well, parking is a nightmare. I mean, let's just be honest. It's an absolute nightmare, especially on the weekends. If the parking garage is built with the BP Restore Act money, that will help tremendously. However, things were done several years ago under prior administration that just didn't make a whole lot of sense, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Planting the trees along Government Street, basically cutting the width of the street by a third. So barely two cars can pass each other right now. But parking is a major issue. The other thing I'm concerned about in downtown, you know, I haven't talked this long behind a mic since I left WLOX about 18 months ago.
Well, you're doing great.
I got to get a sip of water. It's like, wow. Excuse me.
And I'll say too, we can always take a quick break.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I'm concerned that we're losing our identity. It's not happening overnight. It's not happening quickly, but it is happening. I think we're losing our identity in downtown, in Ocean Springs, as a family-friendly place to visit. I think we're gaining the reputation of becoming a mini Bourbon Street in New Orleans, a party town, where millennials go and they have fun and then they leave. Again, I stress, it's not happening overnight, and it won't happen overnight, but it is happening slowly but surely. I think we've got to advertise ourselves more as a place for families to come and enjoy the amenities that we have, enjoy the nature that we have, enjoy the beaches that we have, and not as a party town that's full of bars. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're kind of sending this signal out that, hey, we've got all this nighttime entertainment, and families aren't going to nighttime entertainment.
Right.
You don't take your 5-year-old to a bar. You take your 5-year-old to a beach. You take them to a kayak rental place. That's the kind of thing that families do.
So what are the symptoms of that then? Like what are you seeing that you think could be moving Ocean Springs towards a negative trend?
So just go downtown. Just take a look at what's happening on downtown on a Friday and a Saturday night. The places are packed, and it's almost all young people. There's nothing wrong with that. But that can't be the only common denominator of a successful business plan. It's got to include other things. And by not focusing on families right now, I think we're losing out on a great opportunity to market our city, to promote our city as a family destination. Ocean Springs has got some wonderful things. We've got the Walter Anderson Museum of Art. We have the Mary C. We have all these things, Shearwater Pottery. But I don't see us really pushing that. I think we're pushing, hey, we've got great nightlife. You can push great nightlife, but let's push the other stuff as well. And I just don't feel that's happening. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, definitely. And so, as an air traffic controller in the military, my initial skills training is down here at Keesler. And so if you're an air traffic controller, you know this area because you spent 4 or 5 months here, right? And everybody talks about downtown Ocean Springs and the bars and the bar crawl and all that stuff. And it's, so I was like, yeah, it's one intersection essentially, you know, and about a quarter mile. But it's a cultural epicenter as well. Everything that's downtown, as you said, you've got the Walter Anderson museum out there, and then even Matt Stebley's place, which is a tattoo shop, which honestly on the inside looks more like an art studio. But in any case, everybody that does come here that's military, they always ask where the best place to live is. And anytime you change stations, you always ask, hey, where's the best place to live? And it's always Ocean Springs.
And there's a reason for that. And the reason, very simply, is schools. If you are a parent of children, the first thing you want to do, the first thing you look at when you're moving to a new community is the school system. Is it good? The school system is our biggest draw. There's no doubt about that. Again, as I stressed earlier in our conversation, we pay for it.
Yeah.
And we pay a pretty penny for this great school system. But it is a huge draw. That's why people move to a community. They move because of safety. They move because of schools. And with the school system we have, it's a huge draw.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And even classes that I took whenever I was in high school, I mean, you could take microbiology and you could take sociology, really kind of obscure classes that you wouldn't think would be at a high school because of the catalog that we had, the money that they had. They could attract the teacher talent that could teach these subjects, which was, obviously very, very beneficial. But let's talk about the arts then. What do you think we need to preserve with the arts, and what are the dangers of moving away from, say, this family or centered town to this quasi-Bourbon Street?
Well, the arts are incredibly important. There are a significant segment of the population that visit museums. They travel and they visit museums. There's a certain segment of the population that travels and watches lighthouses. That's why the Biloxi Lighthouse is one of the most photographed buildings, one of the most photographed structures in the entire state of Mississippi. You actually have people going around traveling to see lighthouses. That's why the Round Island Lighthouse in Pascagoula has become such a big draw now. But people go to museums. They go to the Walter Anderson Museum of Art. They go to the Orr O'Keefe Museum. They go to the Ground Zero Museum in Waveland, because that's what they like to do. So we need to promote our museums as well as a family destination, as well as our beaches, as well as our educational system. It's all part of a big mix. And when you start getting away from the mix of everything and concentrating and focusing on one thing, then you're bound to lose. And I think we're teetering on that precipice right now, losing the promotion of the entire mix that this city has to offer.
Fair enough. So if preserving the arts are so important for the city, then should the city be managing all of the sort of artistic important centers that are in Ocean Springs?
Well, no, they don't manage the Walter Anderson Museum of Art. They have taken over the operation of the Mary C., which was a terrible, terrible idea. And it was done, getting back to one of the original things we talked about, it was done in secret. They decided all this in a closed-door executive session. They met beforehand, not in a quorum. They avoided meeting in a quorum to talk about what they were going to do. It was a done deal before they cast the first vote. And what was amazing about it was they actually did this at a meeting where the discussion of the Mary C. wasn't even on the agenda. It wasn't even on the agenda. It just came up. They went into executive session, came back and said, okay, we're taking over the Mary C. The Friends of the Mary C. are out. What they didn't say, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay all those thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every month to bring these programs in and to run that facility, to air condition it? And it's just, so many things were unanswered. Now, were there problems at the Mary C.? Maybe there were, but we'll never know, because it was all done in secret.
Well, the fallout from it was certainly embarrassing. It was embarrassing. Like, I felt embarrassed by it, and other than being a resident of, this area and having grown up in Ward 5, it was just embarrassing to watch all that play out. When I was talking to Melanie, one of the things I said, if I've got dirty laundry in my house, that's for me and the people in my house. You know what I mean? But it became such this public spectacle that everybody got to see this dirty laundry that was kind of playing out. And it's ironic because what made it worse was probably going into executive session trying to close the doors when they probably should have been a little more overt about it.
Sunlight is always better than shadow. It's that simple. I've lived by that mantra for decades. And I truly believe that if you operate government in the sunshine, it's much better than in the shadows. And this government, all government, operates in the shadows way too much. If they had hit this directly, said, okay, here's the problem we have with the Mary C. Here's what we think ought to happen. If they had done that in the public realm, people would have been fine, I think. But going behind closed doors and they're just coming out and saying, okay, the Friends of the Mary C, they're out. We're taking it over. End of story. We're done. We're not going to talk about it. That's terrible. It was a terrible decision.
So for something so important, though, is it wise to not have the city maintaining proper control and funding it directly if it is so important? Because otherwise you put it in the hands of volunteers and market pressures.
Sure. I mean, I'm not saying the city shouldn't take a look at the operation. They ought to take a look at the operation in the public spotlight. That's the problem.
I see.
They didn't. They did it in secret. Again, I stress, were there problems at the Mary C? Maybe there were. But us pesky little citizens, the guys who actually pay these aldermen, they actually hire them, well, you know, we just can't be trusted with that kind of information because we just don't have the nuances down that the aldermen do. We're not as wise as they are. Well, I don't buy into that. I think the taxpayers are very wise. I think the taxpayers, the citizens, can certainly understand if there's a problem and what's being done to correct it, but we'll never know because they never told us.
Right. No, I definitely agree, and that's certainly a problem. So what do you think we should do about it?
I think we need to have a meeting of the Board of Aldermen, sit down and say, here's why we did this. Do it in a public session, put it on the agenda, unlike the day you took it away from the Friends, which wasn't on the agenda. Put it on the agenda and say, we're going to talk about the Mary C. We're going to talk about what we found out. We're going to talk about any problems we may have had and what we've done to correct those problems. That would solve the problem right there. But they're not going to do that because, again, us pesky little citizens just can't be trusted with that kind of information. We're just not that bright.
Well, I don't like the sound of that.
Well, it's said with a lot of facetiousness. I mean, I give the taxpayers and citizens a lot more credit than elected officials do. And that's one thing I promise. If I am elected, I will never lose sight of that fact. These people are the boss. I'm applying for a job right now. They're the boss. They're going to hire me. And if they hire me, I'm going to make sure the boss stays happy. Okay,
so let's move towards the topic of golf carts then, because your ward could probably drive a golf cart down to everywhere downtown for sure. So, what's your position on golf carts? Is that one of the symptoms of this sort of moving towards Bourbon Street?
No, I think it's the people who are using the golf carts. I think the majority of them are families. Now, there's a golf cart rental place in downtown, but you don't see those running around. I mean, it's mostly families who live in Ocean Springs. I think what happened was we were caught off guard. The city was caught off guard by the exploding popularity of these golf carts. I don't think anybody envisioned golf carts everywhere you look.
No, I got
up
one.
And down in the city of Ocean Springs.
Yeah.
So I think what we need to do, we need to get a handle on the situation. We need to take a look at the regulations. I know there was a move to lower the speed limit on many streets in Ocean Springs down to 25 miles an hour, and that's the limit that the golf carts can operate at.
Sure.
So was it a move to make golf carts be more prevalent on more streets? I don't know, but all I do know is that they're everywhere. And we've got to get some kind of a balance between cars and golf carts. And I'm not sure exactly what the answer is, but I do know that it's a problem. And a lot of the people I've talked to in Ward 3 on my door-to-door have expressed concerns about those golf carts, and they want something done.
Are there any specifics on that? They just want them. I mean, I'm sure somebody has an idea that maybe they should be removed altogether, right?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying, we don't need the golf carts. Well, the cat's already out of the bag.
Sure.
I mean, Pandora's box has already been opened. You just can't say, well, now that you've spent $5,000 on a golf cart, you're not going to be able to drive it on the street anymore because we're changing our position. So we've got to kind of come up with an answer that satisfies the needs of the motoring public with the people who have invested in golf carts. Maybe we need to take a look at the number of streets where golf carts are allowed. Because right now, you can drive just about anywhere.
That's right.
On a golf cart, as long as it's 25 miles an hour. Maybe we need to take a look at some of the streets not having golf carts on them, some of the major thoroughfares not having golfs, like Shearwater Drive or something like that. But then people wouldn't be able to go down to East Beach. So that would raise a ruckus. But we need to take a look at some kind of way to regulate the number of golf carts that are operating on the streets right now. And by limiting some of the streets, maybe that could be a potential answer. I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I do know there's a problem.
Someone brought up maybe government on the weekend should only be allowed to parallel park golf carts.
How do you do that? This is America.
Sure. Well,
it's
city
not
ordinance.
It's not San Francisco.
But it was interesting because it gives you, it can help with the, closeness of vehicles driving in opposite direction because the golf carts will be closer to the curbs of the road.
The business community would not stand for that. Because if you take a look at the real numbers, and I have nothing to base this on except strictly a guess,
sure,
I would say maybe 10% of the people who live in Ocean Springs have a golf cart. The other 90% are driving cars. Now, do you think the businesses on government and on Washington would say, okay, we're just going to ban all car traffic to let golf carts in? That's not going to happen.
Well, I wouldn't say ban all car traffic, but the ability to park, on the sides.
That's not going to happen either.
Right, because of the parking issue itself.
Yeah, the business community wouldn't stand for that. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, that would kill their businesses. Because again, the vast majority of the people who are going downtown are doing so in cars. And not golf carts. And they're the ones who are spending the money, for the most part, in the stores. So I don't see the business community supporting that idea at all.
What are your thoughts on one way on government?
I don't know. I've heard that proposal. I just don't know at this point in time. And that's amazing because usually people in my business, if they don't know, they make something up.
Sure.
But I'm not going to do that because will it work? Probably not. I have doubts about it. But maybe it's something that needs to be explored at least a little bit and see exactly how it would work. I think it would curtail business. Which way would you go one way? Would you go to the west up to Washington, or would you make it one way to the east down to Martin Luther King or Vermont? I just don't know. Either way, you're going to tick off half of the people. I mean, if you're going one way, you love it. If you're trying to go the other way, you're going to hate it. So half of the drivers are going to hate whatever idea you come up with. That's just a given. It's something that needs to take a look at. I would like to see whoever's proposing this idea to come up with an actual plan.
Sure.
Here is how we're going to do it. This is the way the traffic would run. This is how it would loop around. None of that's been made public at this point in time, so it's kind of early to say about that.
Sure. Supposedly a study's already been done about it. I wonder if I can get that study from City Hall, but it's definitely interesting. I just don't know where the traffic goes either way. How do you have to get back on 90 to come back down? Because I don't know that there's streets that are parallel or that are reasonable routes.
Would we have to use venting like we do for spring break?
Sure.
Let's vent them up to the interstate. I have no idea. I need to see the plan more to make an educated comment about it. I think it's something that's worth at least discussing.
Yeah. What about a pedestrian-only zone?
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, Minneapolis has a large area up there, and that's something they do. It's obviously a different city, but it's an interesting idea to maybe restrict it to no vehicles. Now, that's even probably farther away from when 90% of people, speculative, 90% of people are driving downtown with cars, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, by the way, no cars,
Well, again, that's an interesting thing to possibly explore. But the one thing about downtown Ocean Springs, which is nice, is you've got pretty wide sidewalks, both on Government Street, east and westbound, and on Washington, north and southbound. You even have them to a certain degree on Porter. So it's not like we're having people walking in the streets, and it's unsafe that way. I think right now, what we've got is good with the wide sidewalks. They're about 5 to 6 feet wide. Plenty of room for people to walk on without practicing social distancing, because then you get into a whole other can of worms.
Right.
Because there's very little social distancing going on sometimes on the weekends in downtown Ocean Springs.
For sure.
All you have to do is go down there and take a look, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But I think that's something that could be talked about in the future, but I don't think it's something that has to be done now. I don't think it's something that is eminently needed at this point in time, especially with the sidewalks that we have.
Right. That makes sense. I had another thought on that, but I believe I went a bit blank. Okay. Well, no, you're running as a Republican, yes?
That's correct.
Okay. Why?
Because I lean Republican on many things. I think we pay too much in taxes. I don't think people understand just how much they pay in taxes. They think of taxes as, well, here's my federal tax, here's my state tax. Those are my taxes. State tax, local tax, excise tax, grocery tax, tax on this, tax on that, tax when you buy something from Amazon now because the state's demanding it. I would venture to guess that for most people, we pay, let me back up, let's not forget about Medicaid, let's not forget about Medicare, let's not forget about Social Security taxes. I would venture to guess that we pay 50% of every dime we make in taxes. And that's way too much. We need to have smarter government, not more expensive government. It's astounding to me that the poorest state in the country, the poorest state in the United States of America, has the highest grocery tax. Stunning. The highest grocery tax. There are 2 other states with a 7% tax, but they're much more, make much more money per person, per capita, than Mississippi. We're the poorest state with the highest grocery tax. It's astounding.
Yeah.
And we need to do something about that. But tax is the main thing. I'm also not soft on crime. I'm coming from the Beretta era. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And for those who are watching, if you watched Beretta, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that was back in the 70s, so again, I've dated myself. But the bottom line is, I hold criminals accountable. There's this movement about prison reform and nonviolence. If you do wrong, you're going to do time. Wrong is wrong. Right is right. There's no gray in this area. It's all black and white. Right is right. Wrong is wrong. If you break the law, you ought to go to jail.
Gotcha. Okay. So at a local level, do you think that being a Republican will maybe make you, trying to think of the right way to phrase this,
more electable?
Well, no, it's more so because right now we've got this polarized duality in the country with regard to politics, and the letter next to your name, people make certain assumptions about you. But it seems to me that at the local level, where you're dealing with people that you've known for many years, you know their kids, your party allegiance, or if that is even a thing, but your political ideology that you might subscribe to is maybe more diluted.
No, you hit the nail on the head, because to be honest with you, I've had people ask me, well, why are you running as a Republican? Why aren't you running as a Democrat? I tell everybody who asks me these party affiliation questions, at this level, it doesn't really matter.
That's right.
The R and the D beside your name doesn't really matter. What we're talking about here in a race for alderman in Ocean Springs, or for mayor for that matter, are life quality issues. Are the streets safe? Are the parks well maintained? Is my garbage being picked up? These are not Republican and Democratic issues. These are life quality issues. And so that's what's really important in a race like this. Not getting bogged down in what's happening in Washington and the polarization and the toxic atmosphere in the Capitol. It's about quality of life here in Ocean Springs.
I gotcha. And I believe the same thing. I mean, honestly, I think because of the national politics, people have to declare something here, and of course, this is probably going to show my arrogance of the entire process. But I assume you're required to declare some sort of party.
No, you're not. You can run either as a Democrat, you can run as a Republican, or you can run as an independent. Now, the process works this way. If you run as a Democrat or a Republican, you pay a fee to qualify to the Republican or Democratic Executive Committee. If you run as an independent, you have to collect a certain amount of signatures.
50 signatures, right?
Something like that. Yeah. You have to collect, and they have to be registered voters. I mean, they're going to cull that list down. And if you've gotten 60 people to sign and 14 of them are not registered, then you're out of luck. By running as an independent, you bypass the primaries. You go to the general election right off the bat, which is going to be June the 8th. So the Republican and Democratic primaries are on August the 6th, and then if there are runoffs needed, that's April the 27th. If you're an independent candidate, you bypass all that, and you go to the general in June.
Interesting. Well, Doug, what's your vision for Ocean Springs?
My vision is to see a city that's family friendly, a city where the school system continues to excel, a city where officials make wise decisions concerning money, a city that is fair and just to everyone, a city that looks at minority areas and looks for need, and there are some. I've been contacted by some of the people in that area of town, in the minority areas of town, and they're concerned about inequities. We need to take a look at that because there's been a lot of that in this day and age. I just want our city to become better. City of Ocean Springs right now is a fantastic city. I've criticized the board for some decisions, but that doesn't mean I don't love the city. That doesn't mean this city is not good. That doesn't mean this board has not made some good decisions. They made decisions I've disagreed with. But this is still a great city to live. It's still a great city to move to. It's a great city to raise your children. And I just want it to become better than what it is. Make wiser decisions and treat our citizens fairly. And I'll bring this up just as a matter of course, since we're on the subject of treating fairly and taxation. I questioned why this board of aldermen voted to increase the garbage fee in the city of Ocean Springs by 44.8%. Now, you just nodded at me and like, you're kidding me. No. This board voted to increase the garbage fee in the city of Ocean Springs by 44.8%, going from $14 to $20. The rate of inflation in this country last year was less than 2%. Some of the aldermen that I spoke with about it say, well, that was the best deal we could get. I don't buy that. How do I know that? Because I covered the deals as a news reporter that the city of Gulfport and Harrison County made with the same company that's providing the waste service in Ocean Springs. They got much better deals than $20 a month per household. And they have 2-day-a-week pickup. City of Ocean Springs still has just one. These are the kinds of decisions that bother me, and these are the things that I think can be improved, and that's why I'm running. Not that the city of Ocean Springs is a bad place. It's a wonderful city.
Sure,
I love it, but it can be better.
One of the indications to me that the city is it's a place that people want to go to is because in the morning there's an exodus of the city. All the residents leave to go work in other places where the industry is and where the heavy commercialization is, and they all come back at night, because that's where all that stuff is, and they want to keep a lot of that out. And again, back to what we talked about earlier about having Sangani in East Ocean Springs, I think that might be part of the reason that people want to avoid that level of development, because they're okay with driving out there because all the negative aspects of that are out there.
They like a quiet, beautiful city.
Yeah.
And a little city. Can you imagine what the traffic would be like if there were some huge development to go up on East Highway 90 in East Ocean Springs? The traffic is a nightmare
already
right now. It's awful. And for people who sit there and tell me, well, you've never been in Atlanta, you don't know what awful is. Well, I have an answer to that. I don't live in Atlanta because I don't want that.
That's right.
I live in Ocean Springs because I want traffic flow that runs smoothly.
Yeah.
I don't want to be stuck in a traffic jam like they are in Atlanta. So, no, that I'm not buying that argument.
Sure. Yeah, I've driven in Atlanta, Thailand, Djibouti, Africa, all over Europe, and let me tell you, I don't want any part of that.
No, of course not. And we don't want that in Ocean Springs. And to me, the answer is very simple. MDOT, which is in charge of Highway 90, the city is not, but we can have some influence, I believe. MDOT thinks the answer is to widen Highway 90 to 3 lanes in the area where it's 2. Can you imagine what kind of a traffic nightmare that would create for 2 or 3 years?
Oh, yeah.
Motorists would be disrupted for years. Businesses would be disrupted for years. It would cost tens of millions of dollars to accomplish this. It would take at least 3 or 4 years to build, not to mention eminent domain proceedings when people go to court because they're not getting paid by the state for the land they're giving up for a new highway. So, my answer is to get with MDOT and work out a plan to change and replace the antiquated 40-year-old traffic light system that currently in operation in Ocean Springs.
I think that's the best way to move forward, honestly.
It would cost millions of dollars less. The disruption would be minimal over the course of just a few months to replace the entire system. And then you wouldn't have the problem that if you drive on Highway 90 in Ocean Springs or live in Ocean Springs, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We're stopping all that eastbound and westbound traffic on Highway 90 at a traffic light to watch that green arrow come on, the left turn arrow, when there are no cars in the turn lane. Happens all the time. Meanwhile, all that traffic's backing up.
East Biloxi is just as bad. Yeah, it's terrible.
You put in a new system with infrared cameras and strips, monitoring strips. You'll take care of that problem.
Yeah, and to put the construction into perspective, if anybody's ever driven in East Destin in the past 3 to 5 years, you know exactly what that looks and feels like, and it's awful. It really is.
I have been over there. There's some of my old stopping. I don't even go over there anymore.
Yeah,
it's just a nightmare.
Yeah,
I mean,
it really
you can't
is.
Stand it. It's almost as bad as trying to make it over to Gulf Shores or Orange Beach using the Mobile Bay Tunnel.
Yes.
On I-10 on a weekend where the traffic backs up for 6 miles. Now that, as much as we like to criticize Mississippi, that was an engineering nightmare. Let's take 5 lanes of interstate, move it down to 2 lanes around a sharp curve under a tunnel. And why is the traffic backing up?
That's right.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love playing golf over in Daphne. And inevitably, I've got a buddy who lives in Pensacola, and so when we go play at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, right? But then I got to drive back west, and it's always like Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock, and it's an hour to get from, east of the bay to the west of the bay.
So where do you play over in Daphne?
Oh, gosh.
Rock Creek?
Rock Creek. I played Rock Creek. I've played there, and I'm so bad with these names.
There's an Arnold Palmer course over there too.
We've played that one. Yep. We've played that. I'm terrible with names. If you said them, I would know them, but my buddy always has to set it up. But
well, I'm glad you like to. Yeah, it's a nice area over there.
It really is.
If you look at the Eastern Shore, and you look at the comparisons between Fairhope and Ocean Springs, they're pretty similar. Pretty similar sized towns. and pretty similar as far as what they offer their residents, the downtown ambiance. I think we could learn some things from Fairhope. Perhaps Fairhopes could learn some things from us. But they're two similar towns. And I like that area, the Eastern Shore. My brother actually lives over off of Perdido Key, just across the Florida line. So I'm driving by the Floribama quite a bit.
There's a nice golf course out there, too.
Yeah, in fact, I played it, and I cannot remember the name of it.
Yeah.
It's right there at the base of the bridge as you're heading onto Perdido Key.
Yeah, a girl I went
Lost Key.
Lost Key, that's what
Called
it is.
Lost Key.
Yep. Yep.
And I was terrible. So I'm never going back.
I've been wanting to go back and play the Preserve, but that's just that's a bear of a course.
I lost all my ambition at Lost Key.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, what's the role that the city should play in determining how a business looks if they want to build in Ocean Springs? Because there's a bit of controversy about the Dollar General that's going up in West Ocean Springs.
Well, the city can demand a certain look. And if you look at it, there's another dollar store right about 4 miles away on Government Street, just to the...
It's on the south side, yeah.
Yeah, just on the south side of Government Street, just to the east or the west of Bechtel. It's very pretty. They kept the tree canopy. They built a sidewalk. They put park benches on that sidewalk. The tree canopy, as I mentioned, is still there. It's tucked away from the side of the road. It doesn't look bad.
No.
So you've got a development from a dollar store, but it doesn't look bad. Cities can do this type of thing. Take a look at what happened with Biloxi and the Waffle House that was being built in the Velocity Zone. The most expensive Waffle House ever built because of the demands of the city. Had to be elevated, and they made it aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't look like your typical Waffle House.
Right.
So cities can have say in how things look, how they appear, how they are built. We just need to have the chutzpah to make that happen and say, listen, we don't like your plan. Now, can we stop someone from building on property they own? Probably not. But can we make our feelings known about what we think about that? Certainly we can. I mean, you can use the power of the bully pulpit for many good things. And obviously we use that correctly with the dollar store that's built on Government Street. We may be able to do that same thing with the Dollar General that's being built right on Highway 90 in the entrance to the city as you get off the bridge. Tree canopy should be there. More aesthetically pleasing shrubbery, landscaping. Those things can make a huge difference as to how a building looks as opposed to just your cookie-cutter box store.
As a devil's advocate perspective, I suppose one might say, well, is it really worth investing all that time and energy to try and change what a private business wants to do when you've got that gas station to the south of 90 just as you come over the bridge, and of course the Dollar General is by a pawn shop that has campers and whatnot out there. But
well, I would say this: I think it's in the best interest of the business. I really do. I think if the business cares about the community, wants the community to shop there, they're going to think about what the community wants to see. If I go to a business and I don't like how they look, I'm not going back. I mean, I want to feel welcome. I want to feel like it's nice. I want to feel like it's aesthetically pleasing. I just think that people will spend more money, will be more inclined to go into that business if that business reflects the tastes of the community.
I agree, and it's you got to tread, I think, kind of lightly, in my opinion, because what you don't want to do is be so demanding that you're not business friendly either.
Oh no! You can make suggestions, and the bottom line is this: it's the business's decision. The city can make suggestions, can make recommendations, can say, here's what we'd like you to do. But the bottom line is, this is not Russia or San Francisco.
Apparently they are analogous to one another.
The businesses have the final say in how their businesses look.
Gotcha.
But if they're smart business people, they will take community standards into effect when they're building.
Let me ask you about COVID. What's the role that a city plays in, say, COVID and trying to promote health and the welfare of its citizens? Should they be in the position to regulate what a business can and can't do?
Yeah, it's a public health emergency.
Okay.
People are dying. We've heard the popular story, well, it's just the flu. Well, no, it's not just the flu. And I'll tell you why it's not just the flu. In a typical flu season, this country averages about 40 million flu cases, which is twice as much as we have of COVID. 40 million flu cases. The average flu death rate in a year is about 40,000. So you have 40 million cases, 40,000 deaths. With COVID to this date, we have 22 million cases and 400,000 deaths. So you have literally twice as many cases as the typical flu, and you have 10 times the death rate. It's a very, very serious thing. The number one job of government, above and beyond anything else, this is why government was created. This is why this government was born in the 1700s. The number one priority for any government is the protection of its citizens. That's why government exists. All the other stuff is just lagniappe. Protection of your citizens. And we have to protect our citizens with common sense approaches to what's happening with COVID. Now, I know masks are uncomfortable. I don't like to wear them, but, I've gotten used to it. And this will come to an end. We should not, as a city, or as some city officials have done, be promoting big street parties during COVID. And that's what happened. I mean, let's just put the onus where it is. We had an administration that was saying back in July, we're going to have a big block party, until the governor shut it down and said, no, you can't do any of that. We had an administration that 3 weeks ago was saying, if I have anything to say about it, we're going to have Mardi Gras, a guaranteed super spreader event. This is the time where we have to be vigilant. We have to be careful. I frankly don't want to die. I'd rather wear a mask and be inconvenienced for a few months than die. And that's the choice that people have to make.
Yeah, I'm on the lower end of the, I guess the culpability factor for it, but it's not, for me, it's not about me. I'm not wearing a mask for me. I'm wearing a mask for somebody that has an underlying health condition, because I might have a viral load that I can pass off to somebody, things of that nature. And I think people are just so, in today's society, it's so easy to be self-centered and not consider that, well, you can be an unwitting carrier of this virus and cause somebody else a great deal of pain.
That's a good way to put it. Self-centered. Selfish. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Yeah. But what's so insidious about COVID, and this is what makes it so much different than anything else, when you have the flu, you have flu symptoms. You know you are sick. The flu is a coronavirus. When you have a cold, you have cold symptoms. You know you have a cold. The cold is also a coronavirus. When you have COVID, the symptoms are all over the map. When you have the flu, you have flu symptoms. You're feverish, you're nauseated, you're tired. With COVID-19, you can have COVID toe. Your toes turn red and swell. You lose your sense of taste and smell in many cases.
You get a rash in some cases, yeah.
Your kidneys are attacked. This is unlike anything that has ever happened with a virus before. It's all over the map. The symptoms are all over the map. And not only that, but what makes it even more dangerous is you have people who've never felt better. They've never felt better. They feel absolutely great, and they have it. I'm not blaming them. They don't know they have it. But that's why this virus is so insidious. They're going out, feeling great, not knowing they have it, and spreading it.
Yeah.
And that's why this is so terrible. That's why we've got to get a handle on this situation and get it quickly. We got to get the vaccine rolled out. We're doing a miserable job as a country right now in rolling out this vaccine.
Yeah. That's a good point. We were talking about that earlier. It might be time, as you put it, to call Jeff Bezos, right?
Hey, Amazon, can you take over our COVID-19 vaccination program, please? And can you get it to the Prime members in 2 days?
Yeah.
We joke about it because you got to joke.
Sure.
I mean, you can't take everything seriously, or else you're going to end up going crazy. But it's good to joke about things like that, but we've got to do a better job of getting the vaccine out. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
We were supposed to have 20 million doses out by the end of December. We're not even close to that. And here it is, almost the end of January.
Yeah.
So we've got to get more vaccine. We've got to get it rolled out quicker. We've got to come up with a system where people aren't kicked off the online computers system to register
Right.
4 and 5 times in a row.
Right.
Where the telephone number you're supposed to call if you don't have internet access is non-functioning. I mean, we've got to do better.
Yeah. Agreed. As just a couple more questions here, but what does your experience as a journalist, how can you leverage that to be an advocate for the city and for your ward?
I have met a lot of people in my career. I've made a lot of friends. I've made some enemies. But the bottom line is I've got a breadth of experience from covering government to seeing how it works to knowing people. I have interviewed a president one-on-one in the White House. I was invited there by George W. Bush, and I interviewed him one-on-one. These are some of the things that I've done as a career. I can tell you this. I can call up the Secretary of State and get a return call back from Michael Watson. I can call up the governor, Tate Reeves, and get a return call back from Tate Reeves. I can call up the lieutenant governor, Delbert Hosemann, and get a call back from him. I can call up the director of public safety, Sean Tyndall, and get a call back from him. These are people I've dealt with, known, interacted with for years, and I think I can use that kind of influence to try to help our city, because that's the main thing I want to do. I want to help our city grow. I want to help our city prosper. And by using some of these contacts, by using some of these connections, we may be able to achieve that.
I would say also your knowledge of subjects is not, it's not surface level. You're not somebody pontificating over a position or a belief, because you're conditioned to get to the bottom of things.
You're absolutely right. Plus, I read a lot. I'm not an expert in anything, but I know a little about a lot of things. And that's the best way I can describe myself. An expert in none, but I know a little about just about everything because I constantly read. I'm reading newspapers. I'm reading online content, newspapers. I'm watching news broadcasts. I'm subscribed to Time magazine. I read that. For fun, I subscribe to Sports Illustrated. Now, people are saying, what's a magazine? Anybody under 25? Well, a magazine? What is that? Well, it's like a book. Remember the books?
Really shiny, glossy pages.
And neat pictures too.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I do read a lot, and I've had the opportunity to see and do a lot of things over the years. And that gives me a breadth of experience that I think can be helpful in this quest of mine to become an alderman, can help our city in the long term. Yeah.
Well, I'm inclined to agree. One final question for you. Okay. This is a heavy hitter. Okay. This is the gotcha moment. All right.
Oh.
So.
Okay. Interview's over. We're finished here.
What's your position, and what will you do to attract a Chick-fil-A?
A Chick-fil-A.
Believe it or not, I get some questions about this.
You know what? I'm going to answer that by simply telling the truth. I have not eaten fast food.
Okay.
Since January the 3rd of 2005.
Go on.
At one point, and anybody who watched me over the years at WLOX knows what I'm talking about, because people thought I was dying. But at one time, I was pretty big. On January the 3rd of 2005, I weighed 275 pounds.
Wow.
I went on a very strict diet and joined a gym, and I lost about 130 pounds in 8 months.
Okay.
Including 60 pounds in 2 months. And I can't tell you how many people called up and said, "You dying, Doug? You got cancer, Doug?" But the bottom line is, I'm not against fast food. I just don't eat it. And I haven't for a very, very long time. If a Chick-fil-A wants to come into the city, I'd welcome them with open arms, because it means new jobs. It means a higher tax base for the city. As far as attracting one, I think the city sells itself.
Sure.
I don't think you have to attract anything. I don't think you need to hire a firm to recruit retail and pay them $30,000 for nothing. I don't think you have to do that. I think the city sells itself. Anybody who comes into that city, any business owner who comes in, or prospective business owner comes into the city, sees what we have to offer, sees the growth, sees the incredible school system, they're going to want to build or locate their business in that city. I don't think we have to sell the city. I think the city sells itself.
I agree. One thing I'd like to let you know, in case you didn't know this, but Chick-fil-A is God's chicken, so there's no calories with it. So you might want to reconsider your fast food position, at least for Chick-fil-A.
No calories.
No calories. Yeah, it's all natural and diet right off the bat. Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to look this up. I'm going to Google this, Brian.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Mr. Belford, I think you're pulling a fast one on me.
Remember,
I'm a news reporter.
I know. No kidding.
I'm going to check, do a little fact checking here, buddy. 0 calorie chicken. Yeah.
Well, look, Doug, I really appreciate you coming down to chat with me. I hope that we can get this out and let people see, a genuine side of people, because oftentimes, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this, but news is short clips a lot of times, and I think you can put something on a poster and talk about maybe a few keywords to talk about who you are, but people deserve to know, especially in a community, who you are as an individual.
Well, to be honest with you, this is a great forum. It's a great thing, I believe, that you're doing. And here's the reason why. So I'm a news guy. Have been for many years. The news is not going to cover alderman's races, period. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then there's a reason for that. There's not enough reporters. There's not enough space. There's not enough time to look at 7 positions in Ocean Springs, 7 in Gaucher, 6 in Biloxi, 7 in Gulfport, 6 in Pascagoula. There's just not enough time.
Sure.
So alderman's races generally are not newsworthy. And I get that. I understand that. Mayor's races, a different story, because they're just one person and it's a citywide thing. So mayor's races will get some news coverage. But alderman races, city council races, just doesn't happen, and I get that. So having something like this, I think, is amazing. I am so glad to have been here, so glad to talk with you, and I appreciate the opportunity, because it is a forum that's out there. They can hear what I have to say, hear my ideas, because this is not going to be in print. And to be honest with you, as a retiree on a limited budget, I'm not going to be spending any TV time either.
Right.
Otherwise, remember when I said we have been married for 43 years? Right. It will end
That's right.
at 43 years. Yeah. Hey, Lila, I bought some television time. What? Well, it's not that much.
Well, I'll tell you that the city of Ocean Springs is the real benefactor here, because there's so many talented people running, and some of the ideas that I've heard are coming from people like yourself who are genuinely invested in the city and its growth, in its success, in its responsible growth. Too.
Well, so. I put something on the Be Informed Ocean Springs Facebook page the other day, and I truly meant it. I think anybody who puts themselves up to run for public office is doing a good thing. we all like to say, well, I'm not a politician. I've never been a politician. I'm just a regular. If you put your name on that ballot, you are now a politician.
Sure.
Period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're a politician, but that's not a bad thing. The bad thing with politicians is when they get elected to office, they forget where they came from. They forget who the bosses are. And this happens so many times. Won't happen with me, I can guarantee you that. But anybody who puts themselves up for public office and puts in the hard work, and it is hard work, walking 57 hours is not easy.
I don't know why someone would want to do it. I mean, unless you were actually invested in it.
And I'm going out there again and doing it starting in about another week, another 57 hours. But I think, so I wished everybody well. I said, we may have differences philosophically, we may have differences politically, we may have differences about what should or should not be done, but the one thing that we all have in common is we love the city of Ocean Springs. And we want to see it do better. So I wish everyone who's put themselves up for public office well. I hope things work out, but win or lose, they've proven themselves to be engaged and caring citizens.
That's right. That's fantastic. Well, Doug, how do people get in touch with you, or how do they, where can they learn more about you and your ideas?
Well, I have a Facebook page designed for the campaign, and that is Doug Walker for Ward 3, with the FOR, not the symbol for, but Doug Walker for Ward 3 is my Facebook page. I also have my original Facebook page, Doug Walker. So just search one of those two and you'll see it on Facebook. I'm doing a lot of posts right now.
Okay.
And then I also have created an email address specifically for this campaign.
Oh, wonderful.
And that email address is osdougwalker@gmail.com. osdougwalker@gmail.com. One word, all lowercase. And I answer those emails as soon as I possibly can, usually within just a couple of hours. And like I said, I post some things on Facebook. Not all of it's serious. I'm trying to give people on my Facebook page a look at who I am. So a couple of weeks I started something called Walker Wednesday.
I saw that.
And
love those.
So 2 weeks ago I did my favorite albums of all time. This is not something the typical politician talks about. I talk about the serious issues. I talk about things I want to see changed. I talk about some of the things, problems I've seen. But I also want people to know that I'm a real person, too. And I talked about my family this past week. Probably this coming Wednesday, I'm going to talk about my pets. My two small little dogs that I had, they're 80 and 70 pounds.
Small's relative, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Relative to a horse.
Yeah, compared to a hippo, they're small. Compared to a Chihuahua, 10 times bigger.
10 times, yeah, fair enough. Okay.
But, so that's some of the things I'm trying to do. Have a little bit of fun with it. It's a serious thing, but I also want people to see there's a human side to me. It's not just nuts and bolts. It's
that's
not
right.
just government or politics or everything. I actually have other interests in my life. And if this doesn't work out, and I plan on having it work out, but if it doesn't, I have a wonderful part-time job at a nonprofit. I'll stay there. I will say this, and they know this. If I were to win the alderman's race, I will not do that job any longer. I will devote myself full-time to being an alderman and dealing with the issues of the city and dealing with the issues in Ward 3. But if it doesn't come to pass, I work for a wonderful organization, wonderful people, and I'll continue to do that.
Wonderful. Well, Doug, it was a pleasure talking with you, and wish you well and the best of luck.
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I am going to do some fact-checking on that Chick-fil-A thing, okay?
Fair enough.
Just wanted to let you know.
I guess I deserve it.
I'll put that on my Facebook page, too.
All right, wonderful.
Brian Belford, watch this guy.
Doug, thanks again for chatting with you.
All right, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
See y'all. Bye. And that's it.